Okay, so before we get to the game, I wanna explain what the hype train is and how does it affect the video game industry. The hype train in video games is when a game is released which has connections with companies who have a strong reputation. This causes the consumer to rush out and buy the game, not knowing if it's good or bad. Unfortunately, this kind of behavior is present in some critics as well, giving the game a good review and regretting it months later. Now we get to Grand Theft Auto 5. This is a game which has received critical acclaim across the board, having a score of 97 on Metacritic, with 35 critics giving it a perfect score of 100, 22 critics giving it a score between 80 and 99, and 1 critic giving it a score of 70. On top of that, the game has achieved commercial success as well, selling 11 million copies within 24 hours upon its release. Even now, 16 months later, the game shows high playability among consumers. But, despite all the praise the game has received, it has its fair share of problems. Bear in mind, I'm only gonna be focusing on the negatives of this game, and this is my personal subjective opinion, which means you don't have to agree with everything I say. So, let's get into everything that GTA 5 does wrong. Starting with the presentation side, the game lets you control 3 characters, Michael, Trevor and Franklin. While these characters are well written and say funny things, you don't feel connected with them. They're not like Booker and Elizabeth, Joel and Ellie or Lee and Clementine. They're just these 3 mass murdering psychopaths who are interesting to listen to, but you don't feel emotionally attached to them. Now, I'm not saying that every video game should have emotionally attached characters, but for a game which has a score of 97 on Metacritic, don't you think that that's a bit of a necessary component? Now, the story by most is being described like the review of Kenza McDonald from IGN. Let's see what she has to say.
GTA 5 is also an intelligent and sharp-tongued contemporary satire, taking aim at post-economic crisis America and relentlessly ripping into its materialism, superficiality, corruption and hypocrisy.
In translation, it's a parody of the American life. Okay, I'm about to blow your minds here. Ready? 95% of the world population, myself included, don't live in America. Which means I have no idea what the American life is supposed to be like. And even if I did know, I still have a hard time with the story. Yes, it touches on many themes, but when you combine that with having multiple missions at your disposal, the plot ends up bouncing back and forth from one theme to another, not knowing what it should focus on the most. If it's a crime drama, it's not as deep as The Godfather. If it's a parody of the American family, it's not as over the top as Malcolm in the Middle, etc, etc. The story ends up being this generic parody display of the American life, not leaving a huge impact on today's culture. Now, I'm not saying that every video game should have a story which leaves a huge impact on today's culture, but for a game which has a score of 97 on Metacritic, in terms of gameplay, you have multiple missions at your disposal, which culminate in various heists. While the heists didn't offer enough variety for a second playthrough, I found them to be enjoyable. However, the missions in between can be broken down like this.
And that's when you press a button, something awesome has to happen. And that's when you press a button, something awesome has to happen. And that's when you press a button, something awesome has to happen. And that's when you press a button, something awesome has to happen. And that's when you press a button, something awesome.
Don't get me wrong, the missions are fun, but they lack creativity and variety. This lies in the fact that a small amount of gameplay elements have been introduced, and the ones that are either make you more overpowered or don't add anything new to the mission structure. This forces Rockstar to recycle mission types from their previous games, which leads to things we've already seen like turret sections, races, and my favorite, go from point A to point B where you kill everybody and press a button because
when you press a button, something awesome has to happen.
Can you see the problem here? How does GTA 5 differentiate itself in terms of gameplay and mission types from other open world games like Sleeping Dogs, Assassin's Creed, Saints Row and more? It doesn't. They're the ones that differentiate themselves from it. So, how about the side activities? This is an open world game after all, and what's an open world without things to do in it? So what can you do? Well, you can play golf, do yoga, throw darts, and how can I forget ride a submarine, which is the most boring virtual activity I have done since Farmville.
Oh, come on! They could have at least put a radio in this thing.
Now, to be fair, there are some side activities which are fun to play, or have a fun payoff, but ultimately, Rockstar falls into this trap, quantity over quality, and by which they shove out as many side missions as possible for the sake of presentation, without giving any sort of depth to them. There's tons to do, but half of what you're doing feels inconsistent. I get that they're doing this to make their world feel more believable and alive, but they have to draw a line between a video game and a real-life simulator. In multiplayer... Now, Rockstar has fixed most of the problems, but even now, 16 months later, people are still reporting major issues. Other than that, there's not really much to say about it. It's basically a combination of a killing spree and a real-life simulator with friends. Grand Theft Auto 5 is a good game, but that's all that is, a good game. It's not amazing, yet alone perfect. Please note, I'm not doing this to bitch about this game. I'm doing this to warn you about the kind of impression this kind of practice, both from the consumer and the critics, gives on Rockstar, which is that they can put as little effort as possible in their game and people will still buy it because of the license. Now, in my opinion, Rockstar hasn't gone on that road yet, but there are prime examples of companies who have this kind of practice well established in their license. So, what can we do to prevent this? It's simple, have an open mind. We should not see GTA 5 as a Grand Theft Auto game or as a game made by Rockstar. We should see it as a separate independent title, the critics should give it a fair review and the consumer should wait for their opinion and then decide if it's worth its asking price. Hopefully, we'll get that in our heads until GTA 6 comes out.